So it's good, guys. I hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's moving about in their day. I just wanted to jump on here real quick for our RBC channel, kind of talking about some stuff with the courts rules and structure. I know I've talked about it before, where we discussed the courts and the processes and the different things of that nature in reference to the structure, the order, and how things are broken down. So I kind of just took some time to want to kind of dive in a little more with the court systems and just get someone better understanding of how the process works when it comes to different types of courts, their roles, their responsibilities in reference to getting cases solved and getting cases trials and stuff like that. Before I start, real quick, thank you to those for tuning in again. Thank you as always, and never take for granted the support that y'all offer, sharing the comments, those who do comment. As always, thank you for passing this information to those who needs it. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to Rebuilding Community Trust. This has been going strong for the last 2 years, advocating, teaching, educating, empowering those to learn what's going on in the government, learn the order, the structure, the rules and regulations, the laws and policies of what's going on around you in your communities, whether local, state, or federal. Also, this site is also known to talk about the police reform issues that we have in our country, as of late. So just continue to share the information. Plenty of commentary, plenty of videos out on talking about different topics. So you're welcome to get on the channel and subscribe, get notifications, and as such, and spread. Also, don't forget about the Freedom Fighters channel as well. I just put out a video a couple days ago, reference honor. So just get a chance to check it out. It's good stuff, positive stuff, in sense of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And for those who wants encouragement or boost, definitely check it out. Real quick, I just want to jump into this. I'm not going to try it before you long. The website, so you can get this information from, is www.uscourts.gov, Georgetown School of Law, and also Cornell School of Law. Their websites that have this information as well. So real quick, some interesting facts. I'm going to talk about the Supreme Court, District Court, and just some of the other different types of court systems that are federal. This is reference to federal courts, and a lot of questions have been asked about the processes of how stuff is done. So I want to kind of touch base on that. The federal court system, we think about the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's the top of the list. And we have we need to understand the processes and how stuff is done when it comes to policy and stuff that's being tried and situated in these court systems. Federal courts hear cases involving the constitution of law and settles the disputes between two or more states. So the Supreme Court is the top court that is U.S. Supreme Court anyway, that deals with federal court cases. We talk about the major cases, such as, I brought an example, Brown versus Board of Education Topeka back in the early 50s and 60s. Those types of cases where a state court can't or is not tried incorrect, it's not tried correctly, or they can't come into a consensus. This is where the U.S. Supreme Court gets involved. They also deal with admiralty law, which is maritime law. That's just dealing with stuff that's dealing with international, dealing with international, ROE, dealing with, where boundaries are set between other countries, admiralty law, maritime law. Then you have bankruptcy cases. That also is another entity of the Supreme Court. And you got to go back to memory of the three types of branches. You have legislative, executive, and judicial. These branches go hand in hand. Legislators deals with the passing of laws. Judicial is your courts and your justice system, criminal justice system. And then you have your executive branch, which passes like it's the president, the executive orders, and, dealing with executing out those policies in Congress and all that stuff. So you got to go back and look at the previous clips. Also, just as basic civics and kind of history type of deal. But understanding the judicial branch and how it plays a role, especially when it comes to court system, and make it easier to understand which courts go where. When you're dealing with judges, they depend on the executive branch. That's an interesting fact. They need the executive branch to enforce those laws. We talk about the Brown versus Board of Education, those state laws that couldn't the state government that couldn't solve these issues. Federal U.S. Supreme Court had to get involved to pass the policies and deal with segregation and deal with the educational system and enforce these laws, force the policies that are being passed. The judges rely on the Congress and these U.S. Supreme Court judges and these seats to enact on the policies that are put in place. All right. Law change and policy. This is a reason I'm doing this too is due to the George Floyd police reform bill. This is something that is constantly going through the process of getting passed, but it has to be enforced from the federal level, and then it goes down to the state and local levels. There's other stuff in place that people are doing. Law enforcement agents are doing to implement change, training, re-looking at policies and procedures. But when it comes down from the federal level, it needs to be looked at and examined, and also, put in law so it can be trickled down to the state and local governments. All right. So this is why I'd also understanding the role of the Supreme Court. They have to put this thing in place. Also, other roles of the court system in general. So people to understand what their roles are. It's obvious they try courts. They go in to try settle disputes, private, disputes, punishments for crime, related offenses, and dealing with other types of issues that are specialized. And again, we talk about bankruptcy, we talk about federal claims court and all that. We'll talk about later as we go on. All right, so lower courts can't, if stuff's not being solved within state and local levels, municipal courts as well, then you have U.S. Supreme Court. Now, don't confuse the two. You have the state Supreme Court, and then you have the U.S. Supreme Court. So those are two different things. So the state, each state should have a Supreme Court as well. So if it goes through the local and district court levels, circuit court levels, then it goes to that state Supreme Court level, and then if it still can't be solved without that, then you have the U.S. Supreme Court. The authorization of these lower courts also comes from Supreme Court as well. They authorized Article 3 that the U.S. Constitution, that these lower courts are established to delegate down, to give states their ability to make decisions. It's kind of like a delegation of authority, to the state level to make decisions and try and settle disputes among the state level. And that's what the Article 3 of the Constitution allows the U.S. Supreme Court to establish those state governments to try their cases in courts in the state. All right. When you deal with certain aspects of the Supreme Court, you have other decisions and court case decisions that can be precedent, state level. So certain levels, like where it's still a state court or district court, they have precedence, in the sense of the Supreme Court is concerned. So it's an example, if you got a Supreme Court case and it came from a district court or a certain state court level, the decision that's made in that Supreme Court level would be precedent over what the state court does. And the two questions that I asked were, are stipulations. Turn page. Stipulations for state and local courts not complying with decisions and policies implemented. And then there's another one I wrote down as well. Go back. Do U.S. Supreme Court decisions are easily incorporated into state and local court in reference to policies, and more so with this police reform bill? So those are kind of two questions that I asked, as I was doing the study on this. And these are important because, again, if a decision was made from the state level or from the Supreme Court level, and was state governments, when it particularly comes to the court system in each state, would they comply or would they not comply? What are the impacts of them not complying to what was passed down? Question number one. So when I did the research, you can look at Georgetown School of Law, their website, and if you ask the question, they can give you an answer. Federal court deciding on the issue of federal law when it comes to constitutional interpretation, those decisions from the federal courts affect the state courts of each state, the state trial courts in the same state. They only apply to that, but they have to comply. They have to incorporate that into those certain state courts. Now, the only exception is the district courts, federal, and the circuit courts. They don't have to actually be precedent over what the Supreme Court. They can kind of go back and appeal and also do their own decisions and when it comes to the court system. So only state and trial courts can have to comply with what the Supreme Court passes down. Federal. District courts, federal, and circuit courts are not so much precedent. That doesn't mean that they completely exonerate themselves from the decision or what was made, but also they have another way to appeal and get their own decisions and rule in their own behalf, if that makes sense. Federal courts may also overrule a state Supreme Court decision only when there's federal questions, which springs up from federal jurisdiction. So if the jurisdiction takes role in those courts in their trial and it will overrule the state court's decision. So say the state of North Dakota, this is an example, and they ruled on certain court decision, and if it's federal jurisdiction or federal precedents from the Supreme Courts or circuit courts or the district court, they're going to overrule what the state court's going on. They can overrule it, and they can challenge it, and they can also get rid of it. So just kind of understanding that, the process of how state courts and federal courts work. It depends on, and you see it every day in a lot of the trials and stuff that we listen on the news, or it's just even in the local area. A state court would make a decision, and that's how the appeals process works too. The appeals process, if something's not done correctly, then the prosecutor or defense can file an appeal, and it may go up to the Supreme Court or go up to the next level. Second question is, this is Cornell School of Law website. You can look that up as well. If state courts don't comply with decisions made with Supreme Courts, the U.S. Supreme Court, strictly defy their possibility of contempt citation. So obviously, if it gets to that point where they defy those decisions, or they start getting in the way of the prosecution of those decisions from the U.S. Supreme Court, then there's contempt of court charges, citations be filed against the actual party, the prosecution or the trial lawyers, or whatever the case may be. There's citations and contempts of courts, and even other issues that goes on with it, and also messes up the process. So in the sense of complying with whatever has been said, especially in that realm of state court or local district courts or whatever, you have to understand that it has to be compliance there. There's consequences of that. Now, 9 times out of 10, you go through appeals process, yes, but most times out of 10, they have to comply with whatever the ruling is. An example of this is the Cherokees in the state of Georgia, which is seeking to remove the Cherokee Indians and seize their lands with the support of President Jackson. This is back, I'm not sure the actual date, during the President Jackson's term. So you can look at I put your actual case here, Worcester versus Georgia. You can kind of look that up. I'll look up and put it in the comments. But you can also review that and see what was going on when it came to example of non-compliance with the U.S. Supreme Court or with federal courts. So that's pretty much U.S. Supreme Courts in a nutshell. You got to understand that there's processes, and you got federal, you have state. So again, people understand state level is different. They may rule different, than what the federal does, in the sense of what type of case it is. And in that case, you have the appeals court, which is next on the list. U.S. Court of Appeals. 13 appellate courts, or same thing as appeals, appellate, same thing, that sit below the U.S. Supreme Court. 94 federal judicial districts that are organized into 12 regional circuits, each within the Court of Appeals. Three judge panel. All right. No jury. So this is where your appeals process begins. So once the case is decided, the verdict's rendered, and if it's unjust or if it's not, feel like it's incorrect, you have the appeals process, and then you go through the appeals court. Now again, you have your local state levels, and then you have your federal levels, which is the U.S. Court of Appeals. At this point, if something is not being done correctly, then you have the appeals process being sent up, and then their job is to determine whether the law was applied correctly. All right, in the trial court. All right, so you got your state levels, and you have the federal levels. They hear the challenges to district court decisions from courts located within the circuit, and even decisions of federal and administrative agencies. So again, you got your state levels, your district levels, your circuit levels, and then you have your federal levels. The process, it has to go up so they can review the case and make sure that it's accurately applied in the sense of law. All right, and you got your other agencies. You have your patent laws, your bankruptcy laws. That's what we talked about earlier when it comes to bankruptcy and personal private business, where finances and stuff like that. There's stuff that's unjust and not done right. They have the laws for that and the courts for that. And you have your international trade and U.S. Court of Federal Claims. 5 circuits have established panels. Your 1st, 6th, 8th, 9th, and 10th circuits. Those are regional, so you can look at those and which system it falls under, whether it pertains to circuit. And that's your appeals court. So your appeals court, again, is the review for errors in the case, the trial court, where something was done unjust. And a lot of times of these appeals get overturned, and they can go back down to render a different ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals. And then it could be a retrial or a re-look at the case. And then another trial is put out, and then something could change, overturn. So that's the purpose of appeals. District courts, right? This is your district courts, 94 district or trial courts in the U.S., which are named U.S. district courts. They resolve disputes by determining the facts and applying legal principles to decide who is right. Trial courts include the district judge who tries the case and a jury. This is your trial courts. Each state has a district court. D.C., each state has one. So again, we're going up from the state level, local level, the circuit level, and then it goes to the district. All right. And then next thing you know, after that, it goes to the appeals and then to the Supreme. All right. So it just depends on how it all falls. The magistrate judges assist district judges in preparing cases for trial. Also, trials can be made or considered and tried in misdemeanor cases. So all this stuff that's been going on, these processes, it starts at these levels. That's what you get your state, if it's, say, a city of Atlanta, right? And you get your case. You can be tried there, district court, your municipal circuit courts, all that stuff is there, your trial courts. And then it goes, after that, it goes to the state level. Then it goes to the state of Georgia Supreme Court. Then after that, then it goes up and it keeps going up. So you got your actual trial courts and your circuits and your districts, and then you have your state Supreme Courts. All right. I think with the district courts as well, when I was doing research, it's with federal, but also it has a bankruptcy court attached as to a district as units. Also in the territories included Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Guam, and the North Mariana Islands. They have their own district courts also in the territories. So if you're not actually in the United States with the territories, the same thing applies. And then you have your special trial courts, which are mentioned earlier, which are Court of International Trade, addressing cases involving customs. So that's your stuff coming out from out of state, your shipping goods and commerce and that stuff, international trade. When you're dealing with goods and services, if you got certain things that you need to take to court for that, as far as different types of stuff that's coming overseas or going in and out, that's when you go to court for that. Courts of Federal Claims deals with most claims for money damages against the U.S. government. So that's claims of if something happened where something was destroyed by the military or federal law enforcement agencies or whatnot, then you go to federal claims court for that. Also, you got another type of courts here. I saw Article 1 courts, which is legislative courts, which they don't have full judicial power. The power is the authority to be the final decider in all questions of constitutional law, all questions of federal law, and hear claims and the core of habeas corpus issues. So that's your Article 1 courts, where it's just no judicial power. They'll probably be forwarded up to somewhere else, but they have the power to at least listen to the case and actually contribute or recommend a final decision in all the questions in constitutional law. So I'm not sure how much is used, but they're there, and they're there for specialized cases, as well as the U.S. Court of Appeals for veteran claims. That's dealing with your veterans. U.S. Court of Appeals for the Armed Forces. So that's your appealing courts on the subject of UCMJ. So all military members because in the military, all armed forces, doesn't matter what branch, you have to deal with the UCMJ, which is or those in the military. That's their courts process or the laws of that. Uniform Code of Military Justice. So once that's being done and the process, that's a whole different process. But when you're dealing with trial or court martial, then you'll be able to you'll be subject to need to appeal or deal with appeal court. Then that's where the process comes through for the armed forces, and they deal with that and they look at the cases and look at the same process as it would be in a civilian or statutory level. And then you have your tax court, your taxes. So that's pretty much self-explanatory. You're dealing with taxes, and if you got issues with the IRS or something was done unjustly, then you have your tax court. So that's pretty much keeping it short and sweet. You have your Supreme Court, federal and local and state. You have your appeals. You have your district courts, circuit courts, and then you have your Court of Federal Claims, International Trade Court, Article 1s, and your appeals for veterans, military, and tax. So it's kind of, hopefully this kind of went kind of fast, but hopefully this addressed some of the processes, because again, we look at the major cases. We look at, what's going on in the news when it comes to how the stuff is being tried, state level, local level. A lot of stuff is routed up from there. And then, you got major cases where it's dealt with federal level. It's dealing with U.S. Supreme Court, Roe versus Wade, Brown versus Board of Topeka of Education, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. You have many examples of cases that went through the U.S. Supreme Court that established some type of policy or law in place to be passed down to the state level. So when it comes to the police reform bill, the George Floyd police reform bill, I wonder if it gets passed, would that be, again, trickled down from the federal level all the way down to the state and local level? So if whatever's in that bill, once review, for those who have reviewed it, you look at the bill and you see what's in it. What are some of the things that are going to be passed? If it were to be passed from the House and the Senate, and it goes all the way through, law enforcement agents will have to abide by, whatever's in that bill. How would it affect law enforcement? How would it affect police departments and policies and procedures and administrative policies when it comes to law enforcement, training, curriculum, use of force, community policing, all these things that we need to know about, we need to understand. These, the Supreme Court, or even with passing through Congress, through the legislative and executive branch, these things will be put in place. So say if something's violated, then that when it goes to trial, after say a shooting occurs again and it goes through trial under this new reform bill, whenever it's passed, then how would the courts enforce what was passed? What would be stipulations in place for those who violate the reform bill or the law that's being passed for police reform? So this is the things that we got to look out for, and how would it fall into the court system and prosecute correctly, according to what the bill said. So this is why I kind of put this out. I want people to kind of understand the process, and hopefully it helps. Hopefully it helps get some clarity to what is done, and obviously this stuff is not, something you can find on your own. You can Google it, you can look at it and see for yourself on the processes as well. So I hope this kind of clears things up. I've talked about this stuff a little bit before, but I wanted to kind of dig into certain things, and I may do another one down the line was talking about the state level, on that level, as far as how the state process works when it comes to the court systems in each state. I'll pick a state and just kind of go through it and see which one is beneficial when it comes to state and local courts. So I may do a video on that so it can kind of help smooth out some processes there. So if you got any comments, questions, please ask. Leave in the comments below. I'm going to try to leave some of the links in there as well, so y'all can take a look. And if you want to take a look for yourself and get some more empowerment or knowledge on this, but it may help because someone's going through it. Someone's going through these processes. Someone's going through the court system. And, if you're not understanding where stuff goes, you don't know how to file an appeal, you don't know what level the court system falls on when it comes to the casework, then you're going to get lost in the system. And sometimes that may make a difference between someone staying in jail for something they didn't do, or someone who getting out of jail for something over the same thing. Or if it's someone who committed the crime, they can be prosecuted in the correct sense. And sometimes with knowing the laws, knowing the system, and learn how the system works, it kind of will give you an insight to follow the case and able to see what is done incorrectly. Those who are ignorant to it, those who don't want to know about it, those who are, not understanding of what your rights are, how stuff works, then that's when you're going to get caught up and get lost in the system. So I hope this helps. Stay tuned for more stuff. I'm going to be trying to get back on following some of the cases that's going on and giving some feedback. If you got comments, you got stuff you want to learn or talk about, please feel free to leave in the comments. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening. Please share and pass on. Thank you. Have a good day.